A hero the world once trusted vanished for years, only to return to a changed Earth and a shocking personal revelation that will alter his life forever. The saga of Superman Returns commences in a grand mansion, where an elderly, wealthy woman lies on her deathbed, her final moments approaching. Beside her stands a quiet, enigmatic man who swiftly ensures she signs crucial papers just seconds before her demise. In a surprising turn, despite her family's objections, this man inherits her vast fortune. He then reveals his true identity, none other than the notorious criminal, Lex Luthor. Far from this intrigue, on a small, tranquil farm, Martha Kent goes about her day. Suddenly, the ground trembles violently as a powerful tremor strikes the area. A strange phenomenon appears in the sky, a brilliant flash of light followed by a massive object crashing nearby. Martha rushes to investigate and discovers an enormous crystal structure, almost like a spaceship. Inside, her son, Clark Kent, known to the world as Superman, has finally returned. Meanwhile, somewhere in the vast ocean, Lex Luthor is aboard a ship with his assistant, Kitty, and his crew, journeying toward the Arctic. There, they uncover something extraordinary, a colossal crystal formation hidden within the ice. This is the Fortress of Solitude, Superman's clandestine sanctuary where he learned the truth of his origins. Lex and his team breach the fortress, meticulously exploring its depths. Lex then discovers a unique crystal panel and, driven by curiosity, activates it. A recording begins to play, the voice of Jor-El, Superman's biological father. Lex listens intently, absorbing every detail about Superman's past, his incredible powers, and the crystals that formed this very fortress. Lex now possesses knowledge he was never meant to have. The following morning, Clark awakens in his old room on the farm, a place where it feels as if nothing has changed. He spends a moment playing with his dog, a nostalgic echo of earlier times. Then, a memory from his teenage years surfaces. Young Clark was still mastering his abilities. One day, he was racing through the cornfields, moving faster than any human could conceive. He leaped high into the air, but suddenly lost control, crashing into the barn roof and nearly plummeting to the ground. Yet, at that precise instant, something astonishing occurred. Clark halted mid-air, no longer falling. For the very first time, he realized he could fly. Back in the present, Clark watches television. News channels are broadcasting the various disasters that struck while he was away. The world suffered, and he wasn't there to help. The guilt is palpable on his face. Just then, his mother, Martha, enters the room. She looks at him and poses a simple question. "Where were you for 5 years?" Clark explains everything. He recounts his journey to search for his home planet, Krypton, hoping to find survivors. But he found nothing. No signs, no life, only emptiness. So, he returned to Earth, ready to set things right and reclaim his mantle as Superman. A few days later, Clark returns to the bustling city of Metropolis. Once more, he assumes his familiar persona, Clark Kent, the shy, awkward, quiet reporter for the Daily Planet. At the office, he encounters familiar faces, his friend Jimmy Olsen and his boss, Perry White. Everything feels normal until he sees her, Lois Lane. But something is profoundly different. Lois is no longer waiting for him. She has moved on, is engaged, and even has a child. Adding to the sting, she is about to receive an award for an article she penned, titled, "Why the World Doesn't Need Superman." This news strikes Clark hard. He stands there, internally shattered, wanting to speak to her, to explain everything, but the opportunity eludes him. Lois is already departing, boarding a plane to cover a story about a spaceship launch. Simultaneously, Lex Luthor is back in his mansion. He descends into a secret basement where a detailed model of Metropolis City stands. But this is no mere model. Lex has a sinister agenda. He takes one of the crystals he acquired earlier and instructs his men to break off a minuscule piece. He then casts this fragment into the water within the model. Instantly, something peculiar begins to happen. The model reacts, lights flicker, then extinguish completely. At that exact moment in the real world, the entire city experiences a massive power failure. Everything shuts down, and the disruption doesn't stop there. High in the sky, Lois's plane also loses power for a few seconds. Fortunately, it quickly recovers, but the situation is rapidly escalating. For safety, the control team decides to abort the spaceship launch and transmits the order to stop it. The pilots attempt to comply, but something is wrong. The system is unresponsive. The spacecraft continues to accelerate, climbing ever higher into the sky. The pilots panic, trying to detach the spaceship from the plane, but even that system has failed. Then, things worsen dramatically. The rocket engines suddenly ignite. The plane is now being dragged forward at an insane velocity. Inside, passengers are gripped by terror, knowing disaster is imminent. At that very moment, Clark is seated in a bar with Jimmy. They watch the breaking news on TV, a rocket launch out of control, people trapped inside the plane, including Lois. Clark instantly comprehends the danger. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushes outside. On the street, unobserved, he tears open his shirt, revealing the iconic S symbol. Superman is back. High above, the rocket reaches extreme speeds. Inside the plane, chaos reigns. Lois tries to help a passenger secure their seat, but the plane lurches violently, throwing her backward. The aircraft continues its relentless climb into the atmosphere. The pilots desperately try to separate the plane, but nothing works. Suddenly, the control center detects an anomaly on their radar, an unknown object moving with incredible velocity, heading directly toward the plane. In the cabin, Lois struggles to maintain her grip, the immense force pressing her against the wall. She glances out the window and, for a fleeting second, sees something familiar. A red cape, a blue suit. She knows precisely who it is. Superman flies in, closing the distance to the plane in mere seconds. Using his heat vision, he melts through the metal locks, finally managing to separate the plane from the rocket. He then propels the rocket safely away into space. But a new peril immediately emerges. The plane begins to plummet rapidly, its rear engulfed in flames. The pilots struggle for control, but it spins wildly through the sky. Inside, Lois is tossed from side to side amidst complete pandemonium. Superman swiftly descends, reaching one of the wings and using all his strength to stabilize the aircraft. This grants Lois enough time to grab a seat and buckle herself in. Yet, the danger is far from over. Suddenly, the wing Superman is holding snaps off. He is flung backward into the air, but recovers swiftly, flying back toward the plane. The aircraft is now falling even faster. Just as Superman draws near, another wing breaks off and hurtles directly toward him. With no time to dodge, he flies straight through it, shattering it with his immense strength. Now, precious seconds remain. The ground rushes upward, faster and faster. Finally, Superman reaches the plane, but he cannot keep it airborne any longer. So, he makes a daring move. He flies to the front of the plane and uses his own body to slow its descent. Below them, a baseball stadium is hosting a match. Thousands of spectators watch as, suddenly, a falling plane appears above them. Superman exerts every ounce of his strength. The plane is incredibly heavy, but he refuses to yield. At the very last second, just a few meters before impact, he halts it in midair. Then, slowly, he gently lowers the plane safely into the stadium. Everyone is stunned, then erupts in applause and cheers. The hero has returned. Superman steps out of the plane and comes face to face with Lois. After all these years, they finally see each other again. But before a word can be exchanged, Superman quietly departs. Lois, overwhelmed by the events, faints. Not far away, Lex Luthor watches the news, observing everything. He now grasps a crucial truth. That small crystal piece is incredibly powerful. In his model, it has already begun to generate a colossal crystal structure, mirroring the Fortress of Solitude. Lex now understands he can create something immense, something truly destructive. A few hours later, Lois returns to the Daily Planet. A major meeting is underway. Perry White announces Superman's return and tasks all reporters with covering this monumental story. But Lois is uninterested. She wants to investigate the blackout, sensing something amiss. Meanwhile, Clark attempts to speak with Lois, but the encounter doesn't go as planned. Instead, he meets her son Jason and her fiancé Richard. The moment is awkward, leaving Clark speechless. Later, he visits Lois's house, this time as Superman. From outside, Using his X-ray vision, he sees Lois with her family, happy and together. In that moment, Superman comprehends a painful truth. The woman he loves is no longer his. So he flies away, back into the sky, back to work. He now focuses on saving people once more, listening intently with his super hearing. Soon, he detects something, a bank robbery. Armed criminals are breaching a vault. Police arrive swiftly, but the robbers are prepared. They mount a heavy machine gun on the roof and open fire on the police cars. 2 security guards attempt to retaliate, shooting at the main robber, but their bullets have no effect. He wears a bulletproof vest. The villain then turns his weapon toward them and fires. But just in time, Superman appears. He stands directly in the path of the bullets, unharmed. The projectiles strike him and simply fall to the ground. Superman calmly advances toward the gun. The robber continues firing until his ammunition is depleted. In a panic, the man draws a pistol and shoots Superman directly in the eye. But the bullet does not harm him. It simply crushes on impact. At that moment, the criminal realizes he stands no chance. Minutes later, far away, Lex Luthor executes his next move. He and his team infiltrate a mineral exhibition. Now that he knows Superman is back, he needs something vital. Kryptonite, Superman's sole weakness. To steal it, Lex orchestrates a diversion. He instructs Kitty to drive a car through the city at full speed, but secretly disables the brakes. Kitty loses control. The car careens into everything. Cars, shops, streets. Chaos erupts across Metropolis. The situation escalates as she hurtles toward a restaurant where a couple is dining outside, seemingly destined to be hit. But suddenly, the car lifts off the ground, stopping mid-air. It is, of course, Superman, saving them just in the nick of time. Meanwhile, while everyone is distracted, Lex and his team steal their objective, kryptonite. He now possesses the one substance that can defeat Superman. The next day, Clark is back at the Daily Planet. Perry summons him to his office, assigning Clark the task of investigating the blackout. Lois, meanwhile, is instructed to write a new story about Superman. Though she resists, she agrees. Later, Lois, her fiancé Richard, and Clark are all working late. After some time, Lois steps outside for fresh air. Clark seizes this opportunity. He quickly transforms into Superman and goes to meet her. Lois is surprised but remains calm, immediately beginning an interview. She asks him where he was for 5 years. Superman explains he searched for Krypton but found nothing. He then questions her about her article, why the world doesn't need Superman. Lois explains that when he left, she had to move on, building a new life, and believing the world could survive without him. Hearing this, Superman gently lifts her into the sky. They fly together over the city, and he tells her something profound. Every single day, he hears people crying for help. The world still needs a hero. They return to the Daily Planet. Superman apologizes for leaving without a word, for disappearing. For a moment, it seems they might kiss, but Lois pulls back, choosing her family. The next morning, Superman travels to the Fortress of Solitude, seeking guidance, answers. But upon his arrival, something is amiss. The crystals are gone. Someone has stolen them, and he now knows a greater threat is looming. Meanwhile, Lois prepares for an awards ceremony. Before that, she continues her investigation into the blackout. Following a lead, she travels to a location with her son, Jason. Upon arrival, they spot a yacht belonging to Lex Luthor. Unaware of his presence, Lois boards the yacht, searching for answers. She then discovers something strange, a collection of wigs, different styles, different looks. In that instant, she realizes the truth. Lex Luthor is behind everything. Before she can escape, the yacht begins to move, leaving the port. They are trapped. Soon, Lex confronts her, taking Lois and her son hostage, bringing them into the main room. He then reveals his plan. He will use the crystals to create a colossal landmass, as vast as a continent. This new land will obliterate everything around it, causing countries to fall and thousands to perish. Afterward, he will sell this land to other nations, building his own empire. Lois is horrified, telling him Superman will stop him. Lex smiles, displaying his ultimate weapon, a piece of pure kryptonite. The moment he produces it, something peculiar happens. Jason reacts to it. Lex observes this, scrutinizing the boy, and begins to understand that this child is not normal. Then it dawns on him, Jason might be Superman's son. He orders his men to lock Lois and Jason in a room, forbidding their departure, and then initiates his final plan. Outside the yacht, Lex places one of the crystals inside a kryptonite container, then loads it into a missile. While this unfolds, Lois remains calm. She tells Jason to go play the piano in the next room. One of Lex's men follows the boy. This is her chance. Lois quickly sends a distress message to the Daily Planet, a desperate call for help. Minutes later, Lex launches the missile deep into the ocean. Then, something colossal happens. A massive wave of energy radiates through the water. The crystal reacts with the kryptonite, beginning to grow exponentially, becoming larger and larger. Simultaneously, another blackout strikes the city. Power fails everywhere. Even the fax machine momentarily stops working. Lois tries to restart it, but the thug realizes what she did and attacks her. Lois attempts to fight back, but he is too strong. Jason watches in terror. The man then grabs a heavy object and advances toward Lois. At that exact moment, something within Jason awakens. With all his strength, he shoves a piano across the room. It slams into the thug, crushing him against the wall. The other men witness this, now understanding the boy is special. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Clark and Richard are desperately searching for Lois. But because of the blackout, nothing is functioning. Then, suddenly, power returns, and they receive Lois's message. Her location is clear. Richard quickly leaves to procure a plane, and Clark steps into an empty elevator. As soon as the doors close, he sheds his disguise and becomes Superman. He flies directly toward the ocean. But as he flies, he sees something terrifying. Enormous cracks forming in the sea, massive structures rising from below. For a moment, he is torn. Should he save Lois or save the entire city? He makes a choice. He heads toward Metropolis. By the time he arrives, destruction has already begun. A powerful tremor shakes the city, shattering windows everywhere. A worker falls from a crane high above, but Superman catches him just in time. He then moves again, saving more people. A giant metal sign breaks loose and plummets toward cars filled with people. Superman flies in and stops it before it strikes them, but things continue to worsen. A man drops a lit cigar into a manhole. Simultaneously, a gas pipe ruptures due to the tremor. The result? A huge explosion. Superman reacts swiftly, using his heat vision to destroy dangerous debris in the air. He then spots fire spreading through an underground tunnel, heading toward a factory filled with flammable material. Without wasting time, he flies into the tunnel, reaches the fire, and uses his super breath to extinguish it completely. One disaster averted, another begins. The giant globe atop the Daily Planet building breaks loose and starts falling. Superman hears it. He rushes through the city and catches it just before it hits the ground, saving Perry White in the process. Meanwhile, Lex discovers what Jason did to his man, so he decides to leave. He, Kitty, and the others escape in a helicopter, abandoning Lois and Jason, who are still trapped inside the yacht. Minutes later, Jason attempts to use his strength again to open the door, but before he can, Richard arrives. He came in a plane to rescue them, breaking in and freeing Lois and Jason. But just then, things worsen once more. The crystal in the ocean continues to grow, rising higher and higher, crashing into the yacht. The ship splits in half. Water rushes inside. Lois, Jason, and Richard are trapped in one half, which begins to sink. Water fills the room. They try to escape by climbing. Lois reaches the door, but suddenly it slams shut, striking her on the head. She collapses, unconscious. Richard holds Lois and Jason, but the door will not open. The ship sinks deeper and deeper. At this point, there is no escape, until Superman arrives. With incredible strength, he lifts the sinking ship and rescues all of them. He carries them to safety, taking them to the plane and ensuring their well-being. Now that Lois and her family are safe, Superman turns back. He goes to confront the real problem, the colossal crystal structure rising from the ocean. There, he sees him, Lex Luthor. Superman approaches and demands the return of the crystals, But suddenly Lex punches him hard, sending him flying. Superman is shocked. Something feels wrong, very wrong. Then he realizes the truth. He is standing on land made entirely of kryptonite, and because of it, he is losing his powers. Lex begins his assault, punch after punch, kick after kick, and Superman cannot fight back. Though he tries to stand, he is too weak. Then Lex's men join in. They grab him, throw him around, kick him while he's down, even try to drown him. It is brutal. The man who saves everyone is now helpless. Witnessing this, Kitty feels a pang of conscience, asking Lex to stop, but Lex is indifferent. Instead, he takes a piece of kryptonite and plunges it into Superman's back, leaving it embedded in his body. Superman screams in agony. He is already weak, and now it is far worse. Still, he attempts to fight, but he cannot. He falls off a cliff into the ocean below. Underwater, he struggles to pull the kryptonite out, but he cannot. He begins to drown. At that same time, Lois and the others are flying away, but Lois refuses to leave him behind. She tells Richard to turn the plane around. They return to find Superman. After searching for some time, Jason spots him in the water. Lois rushes to him. They pull him into the plane. Richard tries to fly away, but the storm is too fierce. The plane struggles to stay airborne. Then things worsen. They are being pulled toward a waterfall. The plane begins to fall, but at the last second, Richard manages to lift it up again. Inside the plane, Lois checks on Superman and finds the kryptonite piece still in his body. With trembling hands, she takes a tool and slowly pulls it out. Finally, it comes free. Superman takes a breath and opens his eyes. He is alive, but there is no time to rest. Lex is still out there. Superman thanks them, bids them farewell, and flies off again. This time, he flies directly toward the sun. The sunlight invigorates him, granting him strength, power, and energy. Now fully charged, he descends at incredible speed. He dives deep into the ocean, generating a massive shockwave. He reaches the giant crystal land and begins breaking it apart from below. Meanwhile, Lex and his team believe they have won. They celebrate, but suddenly everything begins to shake. The ground starts to fracture. Lex realizes Superman is still alive. In a panic, he grabs the remaining crystals and tells everyone to run. They rush toward the helicopter, but suddenly, a massive crystal collapses, crushing some of his men. Only Lex and Kitty escape. They reach the helicopter. Lex hands the crystals to Kitty, but then something unexpected happens. Kitty looks at the crystals and makes a decision. She throws them away. Lex is shocked. He tries to stop her, but it is too late. He now has no choice. He escapes with her before everything collapses. In the distance, they witness something unbelievable. Superman lifting the entire crystal landmass. Even with pieces of kryptonite still surrounding him, he does not stop. With all his strength, he pushes it higher and higher. Finally, he sends it into space. Earth is safe. Everyone is saved, but Superman has expended all his energy. He loses consciousness and begins falling from the sky. People below watch in shock, their hero plummeting. He crashes into a small area of land. Rescue teams arrive quickly, rushing him to the nearest hospital. Doctors try everything to save him. They attempt to treat his wounds and remove the small kryptonite pieces still embedded in his body, but nothing works. His body is too strong. They cannot even penetrate his skin with a needle. In a last attempt, they use a defibrillator at full power, trying to restart his heart, but even that fails. The machine overloads, and Superman's heart remains still. Meanwhile, Lois decides to go to the hospital, bringing Richard and Jason with her. While Richard waits outside, Lois and Jason quietly enter the room. Superman lies there, unconscious. Lois looks at him and finally speaks the truth. She tells him that Jason is his son. Then she says goodbye, believing he may never wake up. Jason also says goodbye, unaware that the man before him is his real father. Far away, Lex and Kitty are attempting to escape, but their helicopter runs out of fuel. They are forced to land on a small, deserted island. In the end, Lex's grand plan fails, and he is now stranded with no way out. Back at the hospital, a nurse walks into Superman's room, but something is strange. The bed is empty. Superman is gone. A little later, He arrives quietly at Lois's house. Inside, Lois is writing a new article. This time, the title is different: Why the World Needs Superman. Without her knowing, Superman enters the house. He goes to Jason's room. The boy is sleeping peacefully. Superman sits beside him and gently speaks, repeating the same words his own father once told him. A message of hope, a message of purpose. Then he leaves the room. Outside, Lois stands alone, taking a moment to breathe. Superman appears before her. She is relieved to see him alive. She asks him, "Will I see you again?" Superman smiles and gives a simple answer: "I'm always around." And just like that, he flies away into the sky, now fully recovered, stronger than ever. He becomes what the world needs: a silent guardian, a constant protector, watching over the city and the planet he calls home. This is the story of Superman Returns, a narrative of immense power, but also of profound love, loss, and unwavering responsibility.